Hello, everyone. Welcome to the distribution group conversation. I'm DJ Mounty. I'm one of the engineers on the distribution team. Just to kick things off, I wanted to introduce two of our new team members. So in the past couple of weeks, we've had two new team members join. One, Gerard Hickey, joining as a senior distribution engineer. And then also want to welcome Stephen Wilson as our new engineering manager for the team. So he's taking over from myself, who was interim, and Marin, who was the full engineering manager before I took over as interim. I see we have some questions already in the agenda, and hopefully there's some more distribution engineers on the call. So the first question is from Sid. Did you want to vocalize that?
Yeah, thank you. So what's your opinion about the red X's in the components list? Like, which ones should we solve now and which ones solve later? And maybe what do you think about maybe starting and linking every X to an issue to fix it?
Right off the bat, I think linking every X to an issue is actually a great idea. I see a lot of them are, some of the X's, some of them are linked, I guess. So like GitLab pages, for example. I'm just taking a look at the list now. If anyone else from the distribution team
yeah, I'd love to have product's opinion on some of these to see like, hey, which ones are actually more important? What ones are we seeing customer demand for versus ones that are just a gap in the product that we've identified but don't really know if folks would be willing to use that feature. Not sure if we've got any product. Eric, we've got on the call. We can probably talk about that offline.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think we should kind of disentangle the prioritization from like the documentation of the issue. I think as Sid mentions, like we should absolutely have a link to every single issue that is a red X on this chart. There should be at least an issue that documents that we have a desire or plan to turn this whole chart green.
Sounds good.
And I'm looking through the list here, and there are some of them that are not necessarily directly relatable at this time. Particular example comes to PG Bouncer. Right now, we're actually relying on other systems to actually provide the HA and redirects for Postgres. We can look at bringing those in, but some investigation on those will be needed, to say the least. Node exporter is one in particular that we've discussed in the past. It's a scenario where we'd actually be asking for the node level information of each individual Kubernetes node, which we can already pull from the Prometheus data in place. So actually running node exporter doesn't do us anything additional. GeoNode we're actively working on, so that's going to be coming in 12.1. Sentry and Jaeger, we actually have some experimentals with these that actually came from part of Contribute. So hopefully we'll be able to sort some of those out within the next few releases. Pages is a big one. A lot of people actually don't want to move to the cloud native charts unless Pages is fully supported. And unfortunately right now that requires a major functional rewrite of how Pages behaves. We should definitely have that one linked.
Yeah, there's probably worth some value in using a different icon for the paths that actually don't make sense. I think a big, visual red X, can mean, hey, that's not a valid path. It could also mean it doesn't actually exist as functionality. So I think we should actually use a different icon to kind of disentangle those two things. So Sid, we'll make that change.
Yeah, so like an NA icon for like not applicable, and then maybe in the hover over we can do, or maybe link to a part of the documentation that says, hey, this is not applicable to this because XYZ. Cool. Should the GDK be based on Minikube or Kubernetes, like to prevent duplicate work, or does that make it like harder to develop or work with development?
So Minikube, while effectively relevant at all times, it is a large amount of resources to consume. Our chart in particular actually requires you go well beyond the default resources of what Minikube wants to use. Out of the box, it wants to use 2 CPU and 4 gigs of RAM. The minimal configuration right now is 3 CPU and 8 gigs of RAM. If you want to actually deploy the entire chart, you actually need even more than that. So I don't know that we can safely say Minikube is a great experience for that. Part of that is actually the base requirements of Kubernetes to operate on its own on a given node. That's one of the targets of what K3s actually is as a product, is to be a slimmed down variant that requires less operational management. Now, that being said, that cuts it from a normal requirement of between 750 megs and 1 gig of RAM just for Kubernetes to operate on a node to as little as 256 to 512 megs of RAM. So that's a significant reduction. However, at that same time, you do actually run into issues because there's some functionalities that are not present in K3s. That's how K3s gets its name. Is K8s is a shortened form for the length of the word Kubernetes, and they've taken 5 components and replaced or removed them, and that's how they came with K3s. So we could possibly do a lot of rework on the GDK to make it actually operate in a Kubernetes fashion, and maybe K3s will give us a better option there. But most of our developers will still need to actually have a Linux VM that has anywhere between 3 CPU and 8 gigs of RAM. Will reduce the overhead, but we still have the primary set of constraints in terms of resource requirements. I think leaving the GDK as is for the time being, understanding please that I don't have a full understanding of it myself, probably is our best move. We continue to ship and operate support Omnibus as a primary method right now. However, we do want to make that change in the future. I just can't say how soon the resource investment would pay off in migrating the GDK.
Is there an issue or something to at least kind of outline what you just said? Think about it a bit more.
I do not remember seeing one.
Yeah, I don't think so. So I haven't heard anything from people using the GDK wishing it was running on Kubernetes. But maybe that just might be something I haven't been involved with.
Maybe that's like more of a theoretical idea of mine than something else. I think running it on Kubernetes is probably our future, and then I'd love for the developers to kind of be familiar with that as well. But maybe this is not the way to do it. Anyway, I love the priorities for 12.0, 12.1, 12.3, 2 and 3. So great work. And Tom has the next question.
Hi, yeah, just been talking to some customers a customer who's running cloud native GitLab, pushing the boundaries, have some challenges, but it's great that they're doing that. So I'm just raising a concern not concern, the thought from support about customers who are running charts live, and if these upstream dependency changes might impact people. I know we do a good job of updating the docs just prior to it, but just to maybe give heads up to support, and we can maybe proactively help these customers before things roll out.
Yeah, so some of the reasons why these haven't gone in already are because we're trying to find ways of making the changes to the Postgres and the Redis chart to minimize that impact. At the moment, we don't at the moment, it does appear that there'll be some sort of manual interaction required to do these updates. But what we will for sure be doing is to ensure that they won't just automatically, when they go to update, get the update and then break or something like that. in the charts, we've managed to put in kind of an early exit system for our deprecations. We'll be making use of that as well to ensure that they when they go to updates, that it exits early if things aren't going to be quite right, if they haven't done the whatever manual pieces need to be done. So I don't know if Jason wants to talk more to that. I know, or Ian, I know they've looked at some of the specific ones so far.
Right. I can happily let Ian talk about the PostgreSQL investigation that he has done. I do want to point out that in the past, multiple people have asked why the charts don't follow the GitLab matching release numbers. This right here is one of the primary reasons we have not made the switch so that our charts are versioned identically to the GitLab version, the way we do it with Omnibus, because we have major components that are still under heavy evolution that we have not yet gotten into a lockstep behavior with for them. So we were 100% targeting to get PostgreSQL and Redis updated in time for 12.0. However, that didn't happen after further investigation showed that we didn't have a way to do any automation around it, and we needed to get good, solid migration data, and that it's going to be a breaking change. So we don't feel comfortable with that right now because breaking changes from upstream like this result in us having to do things outside of the normal schedule that we use for breaking changes, like upgrading from Postgres 9 to Postgres 10 that we did in the Omnibus for 12.0.
Thank you both. Great that you're aware and doing as much as possible. Thank you.
I see the next question is
Brian
from
Wald.
Brian.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. I just wanted to just get a quick update on where our current roadmap around publishing AMIs with no EE license is going to be in the future. I know that there were some changes that happened around that with the marketplace, and I know we've extended that support, but we do have a number of enterprise customers we're trying to get to move to a different install type, but still rely on that today. So just wanted to get some background on where that's at and where it's headed from here.
Yeah, Balu or Eric, would either one of you like to speak to that?
Yeah, I can quickly give a background there. So one of the things that we're really happy and proud of doing over the past about 2 months is getting our AWS Ultimate marketplace listing live. And what happened when we did that is we took the existing EE AMI and applied a license to it and then used it for the marketplace image. And what we should have done was created a separate AMI with a license and left the one without a license alone. And so, when we realized that, we quickly made an issue. It's linked there in 6A. Balu linked it. Thank you, Balu. And so I believe that actually is already available, Brian. And so your customers that are using that AMI can go ahead and reuse that, and we'll continue to support that in the future. We should always have an EE unlicensed AMI in the AMI listings, in addition to our curated marketplace listing.
Okay, perfect. Thanks.
Yep. Philippe, you have the next question.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks. Super excited to see some OpenShift support. I'm a big fan here. Just quick technical question: is there a reason why we are evaluating Git over the HTTP router instead of the node port?
So even though it says over the router, if you look at the issue, the proposals don't really have it going through the router directly. So we have a couple different proposals. What we're probably going to end up doing is supporting multiple ways of doing it, and having documentation is probably what will be the result of that issue. The reason is the router itself only has 80 and 443 available. But so I think one of the proposals does involve a node port that requires the Kubernetes admin to make sure that those ports are open on the node. So we'll probably support that and an additional, and at least one other additional method for users who maybe don't have that level of access to the nodes. So something like using port 80 or 443, but a different domain, as an example, as an alternative. But yeah, when we wrote the issue, we were looking at seeing if we could do it through the router. I think probably we won't be doing it through the router directly, but through some other method that will be documented. But yeah, the issue is to nail that down and then document how we do it and ensure we're supporting it.
All right, and all the issues that are listed in the link on the slide 15 on in the milestones 12.2 and 12.3. Actually, there is no issue for 12.2 and 12.3 in this list. So can we expect all these issues to be done by 12.3?
So for the 12.2 and 12.3 issues here, they were linked somewhat based on our OKRs and also based on just the things we've been iterating on, doing one piece of, for example, this past release with OpenShift, we got the registry working where it wasn't working in the chart before. So we haven't hard scheduled them to a milestone. They were thrown in here more as like follow up to the work we're continuing to do. So at the moment we haven't actually scheduled 12.2 or 12.3.
Yeah, I'd like to actually chime in and give the team a little bit broader context on why OpenShift matters, if I may, just for a minute or two. So right now, when you look at the OpenShift experience, it's not great with respect to installing GitLab onto the platform. There's a lot of documented limitations that we have boards for, and we're basically trying to burn down that board of all of the documented limitations with respect to the 3.x version of OpenShift and moving on to, they just released 4.0. And so I want to let the team know that I actually do view OpenShift as a priority. You're not seeing a lot of OpenShift in like US commercial space, but you see a lot of it in public sector, and you see a ton of OpenShift in APAC. And I've been on a lot of calls recently where this has been coming up more and more with customers, that they're caring more and more about OpenShift, and more people are actually going to the operator model as well. So if you go to operatorhub.io, you can see some of the first class packages that a lot of other companies have with respect to just an easy deployment on OpenShift. And so it's something that I actually view as a pretty high priority for the team. Of course, there's a lot of things to prioritize with respect to distribution. And if product did nothing with the distribution team on a given month, there's probably a good chunk of work that just happens just to keep Omnibus up to date and to kind of keep the trains on the rails, so to speak. And but anyway, the team is doing an awesome job of making OpenShift more of a first-class citizen within GitLab. And I wanted to give the broader GitLab team more context into why we actually care about OpenShift.
And we have been aware of customers interested in OpenShift for some time, and we've never neglected them intentionally or in any way. We've answered every question we can and looked into everything that they have asked. Just to quick touch base on what DJ was talking about is we do actually already have a method to configure SSH not using an ingress, which is what OpenShift's router replaces, by the way. We have most of that documented. What we're going to have to do is specifically call out that this is one of the paths that you actually have to take when using OpenShift at this time. There are much larger concerns that are in that issue list when it comes to OpenShift. And we actually have developers of interest in Red Hat, and we have a couple of team members that we're adding to the company that are actually going to have OpenShift experience. We have a couple of people that we brought on recently in other teams that actually came from OpenShift implementation engineers. So we actually have a lot of knowledge that we can start to bring to the table to solve these problems as a whole within the company.
Fabian.
Yes, thank you so much. First of all, for all of the hard work of the team for enabling Geo and Helm charts. This is super appreciated. That's just a shout out to the team. So the question, I realize, is a little bit open-ended, but As sort of a new person, I think it's amazing to see you can install GitLab in many, many different ways. There's a huge diversity in how we bring this to our customers, Omnibus being the current default. But it feels like, it's almost overwhelming how many different ways there are. And I was wondering if sort of in the future of GitLab, do we believe that sort of a more cloud native way, like more using Kubernetes, will become the new default for actually installing GitLab, especially when you're thinking about larger customers, more distributed systems, and also by sort of limiting the the way GitLab runs and saying okay, this is how we deploy GitLab, how we distribute it. We have experience, we dog food it, and sort of pushing this a little bit more, saying this is how we believe you get the best experience. And is that a more cloud native thing, or is it Omnibus for sort of the foreseeable future?
I'll jump this a little bit. So the first thing I want to point out is the current method of distribution. Currently, we still primarily say that most people do use the Omnibus. We're not saying that most people will use the Omnibus, but do. It's the tried and true tested that most people fully understand how to install in a VM wherever it is and configure it as necessary. It's also what our support currently has the most experience with. That being said, I'm going to touch on the subject of, can this be used for GitLab.com? The answer is not only yes, but we're beginning that migration now. Okay. There's a certain amount of opinionation when it comes to what the Omnibus is and what it will or will not be in the future. In our mind, there will be both methods for a long portion of the foreseeable future. We want to get the cloud native charts to be as capable or more than the Omnibus, and we'd like to see more large customers using that because it does, specifically as designed, scale better. However, you have to understand that when we come to anyone in any of these size of companies and we say, here's our new tool, it's awesome, it's cloud native, this is how you do it. By the way, it's harder. We've just lost face. So we have to be very careful that we don't push everybody to use Kubernetes before the background knowledge in the industry is in place, and that when we do start pushing people that way, we've made it as reliable and straightforward and well documented as we have the Omnibus. And the big difference here is the Omnibus has been around for 5+ years with all of the refinement and time that's been put into it. The charts have been around officially for less than a year on GA. We've been working on them for 1.5 years, but there's a big difference in age and a small difference in maturity. We've come a very long way, but so has the ecosystem that has released every quarter that we're continuing to try to do this work.
Thank you so much. I think that really helps, and I think it's a good point to make that the industry also still needs to sort of develop a little bit. And thanks for sharing that.
If I can jump in just real quick, I think there's another point to be made on that as well. Is from the pre-sales perspective, especially in the enterprise space, Omnibus is still our recommended approach, of course, as Jason was just mentioning. But one of the things that we tell them is that as part of this, we are also working on a migration path so that in the future, when it feels like you're able to take that on, we have geo support, we have HA for Gitaly, all those things that are required in the enterprise space. They'll have a migration path that they can move over to the cloud native charts in the future, which will make that easy for them to do that. So that is kind of the pathway that we're working with this as it starts to get more mature, as Jason was mentioning.
Right. Thank you for making sure that was said while we did this. That's actually a part of one of our OKRs coming up, is to make sure that it's actually easy to transit between the two methods. It's there, it's functional as it is, but there's a lot of refinement to be done to it to make it much more seamless.
Can I jump in very briefly from the support side? And I'm super happy to hear all this as well. I'm super excited about what Jason and team are doing with cloud native stuff. It's going to be amazing. It is amazing. Really happy to hear that sales are promoting Omnibus as the default method just for now for anybody that isn't super experienced with Kubernetes, and really excited for the future when I imagine the cloud native option will be our default. It's going to be a wonderful, wonderful thing.
want to speak up and say one other thing though. Cloud native is default. It's wonderful for large orgs, but we should also be present in the concept that omnibus is better for small to medium business because the complexity of Kubernetes and how many systems it would take, that's a big lift for smaller businesses. When you say, I know for me, if I was to set up a Kubernetes system, I'd say minimum 4 machines docked out. Omnibus, you can still run technically right on just, one system. And so we need to make sure that we're cognizant of that because the small, medium businesses, we can grow into that relationship and we can help them with Kubernetes and bring them there when they're ready. But if we ignore those, it's a large part of the market. And also like the hobbyists that pick it up. Because I know when I was making decisions in my company, I picked up the small thing to see if I wanted to pitch it to my CIO, right? I'm not going to pitch it to him if I can't run it at home. And that is a big lift. So there's a lot of stuff there. We want to make sure we have that. And I'm going to call time because it's 5 till and we have another meeting here in 5. So.
Thanks, everyone.